Tanse, I'm Sanax Centre. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Fires continue to rage throughout Manitoba this week. At a press conference in Winnipeg this morning, it was announced there are 21 active wildfires burning. Currently, 5 are out of control, with 4 burning in the southeast. Tragically, 2 lives have been lost to the wildfires in the rural municipality of Lac du Bonny, roughly 100 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. Premier Wab Kinew says flags at the Manitoba Legislative Building have been raised to half-mast for the victims' families. He reminds residents need to do their part this May-long weekend by following evacuation orders and, importantly, no fires of any sort anywhere in Manitoba. Kinew says at least 1,000 people are currently evacuated in the province, and an additional 1,200 Ontarians are taking refuge here from wildfires in their own regions. He says a state of emergency will be called today for Whiteshell Provincial Park near the Ontario border.
Moving from emergency to tragedy at the news of the loss of life is what is guiding the seriousness of our actions today. It's why we're asking Manitobans to work together, which I know we all want to do, to follow these evacuation orders and to stay away from the fire pits this weekend, and to make sure that we're giving space to the first responders out there.
The Splatsin First Nation's recent blockade of a bridge construction site has come to an end in BC. That's thanks to successful negotiations between the First Nation, located in BC's interior, and Aecon-Emil Anderson Construction General Partnership, or AEGP. The blockade began on Monday at 10 a.m. That's when the Splatsin Development Corporation blocked access to the R.W. Brunn Bridge construction site. It's located along the number 1 highway in the town of Sakamoose, just east of Kamloops. The First Nation alleges their workers and businesses were excluded from the BC government-funded project, and say there has been ongoing broken agreements between both parties. Splatsin also alleged the First Nation's emergency vehicle and trucks were removed from the construction site despite a previous 50-50 trucking agreement, and Indigenous workers were also sent home without an explanation, leading to job insecurity. On Wednesday, Splatsin removed the blockade after all parties came together to reset the relationship and reaffirm their commitment to meaningful collaboration. The new 4-lane bridge construction site is located on Secwepemc territory. The cost of the project is $224 million and is expected to be completed in the fall of 2027. Staying in BC, where the hunt is on to find the owners of 2 pit bulls that allegedly attacked a man while he was out for a walk. APTN's Tina House has this story, but a warning: some of the images and content in this story are disturbing.
This is where I was bleeding, and that's where the dry blood is still on the grass here.
It all started on the morning of Sunday, May the 11th, Mother's Day, when 56-year-old David Peter, who lives nearby on the Stahelas First Nation, went out for his daily 6-kilometer walk. He says upon nearly finishing his walk, he passed by a gray Ford 4-door truck parked in this pullout beside the Hemlock Valley Road, and that's when he saw a middle-aged couple and their 2 pit bull dogs. He says he wasn't alarmed at first, but then he noticed the dogs weren't on a leash and were coming for David aggressively.
I was walking backwards away from the dog, and the black dog was lunging at me, and then he got me on the forearm, and then after he was biting away at my forearm, he tried to get at my face, and I was using my arms to try to protect my face and other areas of my body, and when he couldn't get to my face, he bit into my arm right here, and he was just, his jaw and his teeth were locked right into my arm.
David says while the black dog was attacking his left arm, the brown pit bull was attacking his right arm at the same time. The owners tried to retrieve their dogs, but the dogs did not respond. The attack took place right here in the bushes beside the road. The vicious attack lasted for 5 minutes, and then finally they released David from their grip.
As soon as the owners got up the hill, and I seen that they were about 4 or 5 feet from their truck, and I phoned 911 right away. And
luckily, David had cell service, and the operator kept him on the phone for 33 minutes, awaiting the ambulance. But he says he was close to blacking out and in severe pain, bleeding profusely. He says he also sent a Facebook message to family that he needed help.
I messaged them, and they came, but they had a hard time to find me.
The attack left David with a mangled left arm that required over 50 stitches, visible teeth punctures, scratches, and bruises. The attack happened so fast, and there were no other witnesses, but he shared with us what he remembered.
They were really mean-looking dogs, and the truck was a older gray truck. I think it was a Ford. The lady had blondish white hair. I think they were either in their 50s or 60s, the couple. And they got their dog in a vehicle, and I was right here on 911. They turned their truck around and they came back down the hill, and they drove by me. The guy, the man didn't say anything, and the lady said, "I'm so sorry." And she said that when they left. She said, "I'm so sorry." And then I drove by, and the lady said, "I'm so sorry, but they left me laying here."
The brutality of the attack has shaken the community, and the emotional toll is also evident. His friends and family came to do a smudge with him and sing an honor song for his healing. Tim Felix is a counselor for the Sanax First Nation. Have the police been notified?
They have. There's a file open, vague description, and the leadership table, administration, organization thought right away we better do a media release, because with the amount of information the police had, we didn't think that justice would prevail because they had so little information. So we thought putting this out into the media release would hopefully help identify the culprits.
David Peter is a father, grandfather, and now great-grandfather to a 9-week-old baby boy. And despite all he's been through, he's grateful it didn't happen to anyone else.
I rather that happen to me than a child or an elderly person. I hope that the owners of dogs get the message to keep their dogs on a leash. I really hope that you find it to be able to turn yourself in and to take accountable for what those dogs did to me.
We reached out to Agassiz RCMP, but did not hear back for an interview. David Peter has filed a police report. If you know who the owners are of these 2 pit bulls, please contact the RCMP in Agassiz. Tina House, APTN National News, Sanax First Nation.
A cultural space named the Sanax Centre opened last Friday in Montreal. The centre celebrates Inuit culture through artwork and displays. But as APTN Savannah Craig reports, some say this space represents wealth disparity.
A building has just been opened to the public near Cabot Square, which is an area frequented by many homeless Indigenous people. It's not a condo, it's the Sanax Centre, which is a community and cultural space. It includes a cafe, theatre, art installation, library, and the largest collection of Indigenous books. The Sanax Centre was named after a well-known novel of the same title, written by Mitsiariuk Napaluk, which was loosely set around the 1950s. The book looked at the Inuit of Kungiksujuak and their initial contacts with Halunat, known in English as white people.
Sanax means home, and if those that are on the streets see Sanax, will they be welcomed in this space? If they are in crisis, will they allow them into the building?
Naguset is the executive director of the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal.
Take a look behind you about what they're creating. This is a multi-million-dollar condo.
She said this to APTN News back in 2021 when she was frustrated about the amount of condos popping up in the area. She's still frustrated, but now takes issue with how buildings in Cabot Square are being used. While Naguset appreciates the celebration of Inuit culture, she's concerned there's not enough focus on providing services to the unhoused Inuit near Cabot Square.
When they were building the condos and Sanax, because they're all the same thing, there was a woman named Elizabeth Putaguk, and she died. She died because she had nowhere safe to stay, and she died.
She says Indigenous-led organizations near Cabot Square weren't involved in the decision-making process of the Sanax Centre by the City of Montreal. Aliyah Hassan Cornal is the city councillor for the City of Montreal in charge of reconciliation with Indigenous people. She says Inuit-led organizations were involved, but these organizations are located outside of Cabot Square.
When we started thinking about how this center could be and what meaning it could have, for sure we wanted to include the Indigenous community, especially Inuit.
Tina Pasukti is the executive director for the Southern Quebec Inuit Association.
Right beside the Cabot Square, you have Sanax Centre that has a very different image of Inuit that is really showcasing Inuit culture.
She says this is a turning point for positive representation of Inuit in Montreal. While the Sanax Centre doesn't provide housing, Pasukti says it is a space for all.
In the centre, instead of hiring security guards, they're working with the downtown YMCA to do more of cohabitation and more working with the population and speaking to them about tolerance and cohabitating so that we can have better outcomes.
While some see this as a step forward for positive representation for Inuit in Montreal, others want more for Cabot Square.
You have people that are on the streets, people that actually are from the Inuit community, and you've got to pass them to get into a multi-million-dollar community center. I think that needs to change.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
We'll have more news after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. As we heard earlier, it's been a tragic and somewhat early start to this fire season. On this week's InFocus podcast, we spoke to two First Nation wildfire experts about wildfire preparedness. Leanne Sanders is filling in for our host Sierra Bettens this week. Here's a preview of that episode following our interview with Leanne to tell us more.
We're seeing earlier starts to our fires year after year. I remember, 6 years ago, and we would still be really in preparedness mode in April. And now we're seeing fires popping up, and they're not small fires. They're leading to huge wildfire events for our communities as well.
Leanne, thanks so much for joining us. My first question is, how prepared do these officials believe most First Nations communities are for what is already a terrible fire season?
Some, they say, are fairly well prepared, some not as much. Michelle Vandevoort, she's the director of Saskatchewan First Nation Emergency Management, and she says she thinks most communities in that province are well prepared, but she said what's really been the wild card this summer or this season so far is the winds and the weather, obviously very, very dry, and they just sort of pop up with these, possibly even somebody having a controlled burn and then something happening and it getting out of control rather quickly. And then she said, of course, the wind then pushing them toward communities, putting them at pretty great risk.
Yeah, the lack of moisture, the short winter, all of those are definitely factors. Leanne, one of your guests is with the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council. What is the council proposing there?
So Arnold Lazare had a very good conversation with him. They've got an idea that Canada nationwide, First Nations need a national body or a national fire suppression team that can be sent out, on fairly short notice to any First Nation in Canada that needs firefighting support. And they are working toward that goal with training of youth in wildland firefighting. And they're also doing advocacy work. I think they're planning on lobbying the new federal government for this. So yeah, they're very serious about its implementation.
Definitely a lot of important services needed in First Nations. What do your guests say about the real impacts of wildfires that often impact First Nations communities the most?
Well, it's not just the costs. Obviously, we know when property is lost and has to be rebuilt or replaced. Already First Nations have, housing shortages as it is. But the cost really is the human cost, the effects that it has on children. Michelle Vandevoort said that some kids are really, really worried about going back to their communities after they've been evacuated because they're just scared, obviously, of the threat of a fire. And Arnold has mentioned to me that, the real impact for the elders is when they have to evacuate. Of course, it's very traumatizing. And also, a lot of them get housed in dormitories in the cities and communities that they get evacuated to. So that in itself is reminiscent of what happened in their residential school, in their experiences. So it's just re-traumatizing in many, many different ways for all ages.
Leanne Sanders, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's Thursday, and that means Fraser Needham joins us from Ottawa to tell us what's ahead on APTN's Nation to Nation tonight.
Coming up after the evening news, Mark Carney unveiled his new cabinet this week, appointing 2 Indigenous MPs to cabinet and another as a Secretary of State. One of those MPs is Mandy Galmasti, who is the new Minister of Indigenous Services Canada. She joins us in studio. Carney's new cabinet contains a number of old faces from the Justin Trudeau era. We talked to Pam Palmater of Toronto Metropolitan University about whether this really is a cabinet of change. And Winnipeg NDP MP Leah Gazan is also here to talk about what the future holds for her party after its worst historical showing in the recent election. All this ahead on Nation to Nation.
We have to take another break. More news when we come back. On the east, Halifax 22 and sunny, Charlottetown 22 there as well. Anujiwak -3, La Grande River 10. Gaspé 10, Saguenay 21. Peterborough 19, Ottawa 26 and sun. Wawa rain and 17, Elliott Lake 22 and sun. -2 in Churchill, God's Lake 4. Princess Harbour 11, Gimli 11. North Battleford 11, Yorkton rain and 5. Stony Rapids 1, Buffalo Narrows sunny there with +4. Rain and high level at 18, Fort Chippewa 9. 15 in Lethbridge, Medicine Hat 18. Campbell River 14, Bella Coola 13. Sandspit 10, Smithers 12. Whitehorse 12, Dawson 11. Wrigley 11, Fort Simpson 13. Sax Harbor -6, Polituck -4. -4 in Whale Cove, Chesterfield -4. And Clyde River -6, Aglulic -7. The 28th annual Vision Quest is taking place in Winnipeg this week. The conference brings together thousands of people to inspire one another. It's also a place to show off your crafts and small businesses. That's where T.R. Wheatley went shopping this week.
Indigenous business folks coming together in one space, vendor after vendor, each with its own little niche.
These are good for smokeless smudge.
Sprays, lip balms, lotions, and soaps, all made by Lac Seul band member Francesca Amin.
So I started Sweetgrass Soap in 2021. I actually started in my kitchen. I started formulating soaps for my son, actually, because he had cradle cap, eczema, always had skin problems, and I found that most of the big brands in stores, well-known big brands, had too many sulfates, parabens, which penetrate skin, make skin inflamed, and cause these kind of dry skin irritation stuff. So I decided to look into homemade soap. My best seller is the Deadly Anti. This is the one I'm most well known for. Smells amazing. But yeah, give it a try. Yeah.
Amin's business is based out of Langley, British Columbia. She says many Indigenous-owned stores across the country carry her products.
So my website is sweetgrasssoap.com. You can place an order online.
Family game night res style is also an option. There are 16 life-sized games the Smoke Sisters from Dakota Plains First Nation created through their business, Ninawaste. The idea brings games like Hoodis, Scrabble, Yardsie, and more to your backyard party. With just 1 year in business, Tana Smoke says they've already learned a lot.
Definitely a positive going in is that we do work full-time outside of our business, and I'm an accountant of 13 years, rails and sales and marketing going on 6, so that definitely helped us in getting our business started.
Rael Smoke says they are already planning to expand with hopes of adding 5 new games a year.
So we've always been like a big gathering gaming family. Every time we get together, we always play a game with the kids and the family. So that's kind of where we stand it on games first.
This shirt vendor was also quite popular with patrons coming and going. Chris Thompson's business Warnge started in his basement. He says his family are jokesters and they just started a play on words and logos already out there.
Yeah, we have a lot of deadly items, Deadly Anti, Deadly Cookum, just Deadly. We're starting to get in more into more like traditional looking designs, female designs, floral designs. Yeah, our website is www.warnge.com, WARNGE.
With a silk on top of it, and then they just have the ribbons. And then we can make them in any colors that you need to, right?
And what's an Indigenous craft market without the traditional items? Roberta Bear and Tika's Boutique have been a staple at the Forks in Winnipeg for over 2 decades.
The website is, we have tikasboutique.com, and you can find us on Facebook, what else, Instagram.
Becoming a place to help those just starting out.
We actually, with all of our stores, we actually deal with probably 100 to 200 different crafters on a yearly basis that drop off little pieces, you know, where it helps support their household.
And supporting one another being one of the original goals of what the visionaries of Vision Quest set out to do all those years ago. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your daytime newscast for this Thursday. TR Wheatley will host our evening newscast in a few hours. Please join us then. Hi, miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Ekse.